Welcome, welcome, welcome into my safe place 414 Hub Blueprint podcast. I am Apostle Jacqueline Hudson. Encapsulated in this safe place is for such a time as this. Many in this hour will be stretched. Come and go with me to the path of least resistance. What is my safe place? Wisdom, knowledge, gems, hidden things God reveals in secret. And so this is episode 51. The title, I'm doing a series and it's Bridal Series, Seen, Found, Cherished by Love. So, Bridal Series, that's the series that I'm on. Seen, Found, Cherished by Love. And originally I was slated to do 5 segments of the Bridal Series, but it's just been increased to 10. So I'll be doing, as it stands right now, unless something changes, I will be doing 10. The people that I'm working with for my sponsor and my podcast is, I'll release that later because it's still, I'm still finalizing the details. But so now it's been increased to 10, and it's the Bridal Series, 10 segments, Seen, Found, Cherished by Love. And this is episode 51. So one day I was in church, and that's not the only place where ministry takes place. I want to ring that bell, if you will, put that out there. Ministry begins at home and then goes abroad. And so, and for home is different for everybody. We know home is in our heart, but also home is different for everybody. Your home might physically be located in the United States, but then someone else's home is located abroad, right? But wherever home is, ministry begins at home, and then it spreads out. It goes abroad. And so, and many times I know with me, the Lord may, because it may not be His timing to minister to people in your family or those tied to your family or extended family. And so the Lord may have you begin ministry out and then come back in. He's very strategic in that way. He's not going to allow anything to hold you up from walking in your God-given purpose. Okay? So I wanted to start with that, set the tone with that. And so one day, the 3 points, I'll say it this way, the 3 points that I am highlighting for this episode is Hephzibah, and that's spelled Hephzibah. The other is My Delight is in Her. And then there's 2 scriptures, actually 3, but 2 to start, that where my delight is in her, where I am focused on today or targeting today, or that I'm gleaning from. And so one day I was on assignment, and I was at a particular church where the Lord led me to go. And this was in 22. No. It was 2021. It was the fall of 2021. And the pastor was preaching, and I leave out the names and the church names, the names of the pastors and the churches, because that's not pertinent. And whatever God does to any of us, that's between that person and the Lord. And if they choose to share it and disclose their name and the name of their church affiliation, that's on them. So for me, I am just going to tell the example as it related to me and what God just expounded upon for me in church that day. And so the pastor preached, and he said very specifically, he said, he says, who all has been hurt? Where someone's hurt you, done something to you, And he wasn't dealing with forgiveness at that point, but he just said, who all has been hurt? And he said, I'm sure everyone this applies to. So everyone raised their hand. But I was having a problem with raising my hand because in my mind, I felt like if I've forgiven of that thing, if I've forgiven someone of a particular thing, then it's no more. That's it. I'm not struggling with it anymore. And that's how the Lord taught me that I needed to forgive and let it go, move on from it. And so I was kind of struggling with raising my hand, but at that time I just thought, well, let me just see where he's going with this. And then he continued on. He said, now of all those times, I want you to tie a dollar amount to the times you've been hurt. And he says, there's no limit on the amount. If you could be in the millions. So he goes on and he continues in that way. And everybody was coming up with a number and of how much, what that ties to as far as how they've been hurt. And so I was like, Lord, I wasn't holding on to anything. And the Lord had purged me of those things and pruned me of those things. And it was the Lord that reminded me that I needed to pray for my enemies and bless those that despitefully use you and so forth and so on. So I wasn't holding on to anything. And so in that moment, I heard Hephzibah. And I said, Lord, because I had never heard it before. And I said, Lord, but I knew it was the Lord whispering that to me. And I said, Lord, and this is in church, I heard this. And I said, Lord, is that you? And I heard, yes, my child. And so I began to search it out. Again, you'll hear me say this quite often. It's the glory of God to conceal a thing. It is our kingship, our queenship to search it out. So when I heard that whispered to me, the Lord whispered it to me, I then looked it up. And when I looked it up, I was pleasantly surprised. I was amazed. And it said, my delight is in her. Yes. And I was like, whoa. And that was the Lord's response to me that I didn't need to participate in that activity because he saw me as Hephzibah. He saw me as Hephzibah. And in the Bible, also when I looked it up, what I noticed was Hephzibah was the wife of King Hezekiah. And so also what I'm reminded of is this passage, and this is the perfect time to read it. It's Psalm 70. No. I'm sorry. It's Psalms 40:3. And it reads, and I'm in the King James for right now. And he hath put a new song in my mouth, even praise unto our God. Many shall see it and fear and shall trust in the Lord. And when I read that, because there are a number of scriptures concerning my delight is in her, or the reverse that says, I delight in the Lord. And so I'm going to read that one to you also. And that one is Psalms 37:4. And it reads, delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give thee the desires of thine heart. And so with that said, I was amazed. I was blown away because, one, the Lord knew I had let it go. I had let it all go, right? And he was telling me, this is how he sees me. But also, it says in 37:4, it says, delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give you the desires of thine heart. But in 40, it says, 40:3, it says, and in the first part of it, it says, and he hath put a new song in my mouth. And the Lord did that for me. I leaned into the Lord. I went deeper into the Lord. And because of that, and I remember him saying this to me, I made room for the Lord. And so he brought me into a spacious place. And so when the Lord made me aware of that, he reminded me of that, I was like, oh, wow. Okay. Isn't that something? So I knew that day in church that wasn't for me. It didn't apply to me. And I for those that would say, well, why didn't it apply to you? Well, that's what I was just explaining to you, or for this episode. I have found a place. I have found the Lord in my worship. I've pressed into the Lord in my time of study with the Lord. I let him guide me on what I need to read in a specific moment in time. And so because I delighted myself in the Lord, he delights in me. And so, but he waits till this time, which was fall of 2021, to reveal this to me. And which also means he didn't show me this before now. I never heard the Lord say Hephzibah to me, whisper it to me until that moment in time. And so that means I wasn't ready at that time, back then. He waits till fall of 2021 when I'm listening to the pastor preach. And I kept saying, but Lord, I'm not holding on to anything. Like in my Noah, in my heart of hearts, I knew I had let it all go. Everything. And if you're saying, no, there's no way, but what about what this person did to you? I'm telling you, everything. Because I knew if I was going to walk in God's pursuits, if I'm going to do it his way, I have to do it all or nothing. For me, I just felt like I could not fake the funk. I couldn't half step and just do it all willy-nilly. Besides that, early on in 2012, I surrendered everything to him. The Lord was pruning me. He continued to prune me. But I said, Lord, your way, because my way's not working. And it really wasn't working. So, with that said, as the pastor got through that sermon, he had everyone put a dollar amount on it. And I didn't say anything. I didn't come up with a dollar amount. And then he gave the comment at the end when they came up with their amount. He said, okay, we need to let that go. And it was confirmation for me because I knew that I had let everything go. So, with that said, I would just encourage you to, one, if you don't have a relationship with the Lord, you should. Because he's going to reveal the secret things to you. He's going to, and not just for that reason, but we all should have a relationship with the Lord. And it shouldn't be about us. I'm referring to believers, but it's whosoever will. It shouldn't be that we just have a slice of cake relationship with the Lord. In other words, we only go to him when we want something, or when we're having a hard time. It should be a lifestyle. It should be a regimen of us, not religiosity, but a regimen in that we have a frequent time in the Lord. And I promise you, he's going to show you things. He's going to reveal things to you like never before. And on that note, Hephzibah. So the Lord speaks these words to me often. He whispers them to me. And for the longest time, I never thought about or pondered, why are all these words he's speaking to me? Most of them are Jewish. And I just never even, it never dawned on me. I just kept hearing him say different words here and there. He speaks other words to me that aren't Jewish, but for the most part, he keeps speaking Jewish words to me, or Hebrew. And then I find out this past summer that I have a small, like a pint of Jewish heritage in me. And I did not know that before. But God would know that. Only God. Because see, my biological parents, both are deceased. So here God speaks these words to me, whispers them to me, and a large number of them are Hebrew. So all of that said, there's something to be said about spending time in the Lord, having a relationship with Abba Father. Okay? And so then the last thing I will say is, if you're like me, God has crafted you, he has chiseled you for such a time as this. Very simply, he is placing you on display. And what does that mean? What does that amount to? The last shall be first. And you know what's really funny, and just I'm in awe of him, is you've been in last place for all this time, but there was a reason for it. The Lord did it by design, because he was raising you up. He was training you. He was showing you how he wanted things to be done as new wine. Because truth be told, you can't put new wine into old wineskin. And you're like, well, why would you do that? Exactly is the Lord's point. You can't put new wine into old wineskin. So the old has to go away so that the new could be ushered in. And in fact, visualize this. The new wine would burst in the old, because the new wine is better, is bigger, is bolder, is greater. It can't even fit. So it would burst at the seams, right? It would burst. And I'm reminded of the Lord saying to me in 2012, and everything was falling apart for me, sliding downhill like quicksand. And He said, and I still had my bakery. I was holding on to my bakery for dear life. And he said, shut it down, and I'll give it back to you better than ever before. So, all of that said, I want to read this last passage for you with respect to he's putting you on display. Behold, and this is Zephaniah 3:19. Behold, at that time I will undo all that afflict thee, and I will save her that halteth, and gather her that was driven out. And I will get them praise and fame in every land where they have been put to shame. And I don't know about you. I don't know about you, but a lot has happened, and I have held on to nothing. And because I've held on to nothing, I know. I don't know about you. You got to be convinced of who God says you are. I can't believe that for you. But for me, I know who God says I am. And I know that I'm his, right? And I also know this is my time. That's what's important. If you're like me, this is your time. And all the times where your name has been dragged through the mud, the muck, the mire. Yes, some of that you did. Some of that I did. Okay? But God afflicted you too, to make you better than ever before, to make you his warrior, his special possession. The last shall be first. And I can reassure you, I can guarantee you, he pulled you out of last place, the back of the line, to put you in the front of the line. And it doesn't matter who was in the front. He took you from the back of the line and put you in the front of the line. And you can take that to the bank. God promised me that. And so I am clear. I am fully persuaded that the last shall be first. I know that's me, and it's my time. And so what about you? Has the Lord been dealing with you on to do certain things, to rise up and do certain things, to walk in certain ways? If he has, I would encourage you, I would implore you to do it. If you haven't already started, if you started, then this word is for you. Yes. And if I could just remind you of one more thing, be holy, because your Father is holy. Be holy because God is holy. That's what the Bible says. Yes. All right. I love you, but God loves you best. Bye-bye.